Welcome to Music Ed Tech Talk, a podcast exploring music, education, technology, and the intersections between them, with a special focus on the productive and creative process. I'm your host, Robby Burns. Thanks to my sponsor this week, Scale Exercise Play-Along Tracks. Hey everyone, it's me, Robby, and I wanted to drop in and do a little mini episode. I do have another one longer with a guest coming out in just a few days, but I wanted to drop in and talk about some news that's been going on lately. Specifically, 2 new Apple software updates, I guess 3 if you want to look at it this way, macOS Ventura, and then iOS 16.1. I've talked about iOS 16 earlier on the show, but 16.1 brings some new features that make the iPhone more awesome, and also the kind of like really big 16 feature for the iPad, which is Stage Manager. Also, there are new iPads that have been announced, and I know people like those. And with all these updates come questions, of course, about should you update your computer now, and especially with regards to creative professional software like music notation software. So I'm going to give you a little quick hot update about all of these topics and my quick takes having used and beta tested these new software updates over the past couple of months. And then I'll give you music, an app, and a tech tip of the week. And then I'll see you again in just a couple days. Okay, first up is macOS Ventura. This is the brand new macOS update that came out just a couple of days ago as I am recording this. It's got a lot of features that are in common with iOS 16. I don't plan on covering everything, but there are a few things that are specific to just the Mac operating system that I also think are compelling and plan to use. So I thought I would just cover a couple of those really quick. The first of which is called continuity camera. And, MacBooks don't really have great webcams. In fact, we all from, a couple years ago, if you were like in an online teaching scenario for a really long time, you may have gone out and bought a webcam because, the ones that come on computers, even the best Macs, are not really that amazing. However, most people have a smartphone in their pocket that has a really incredible camera on it. And so what continuity camera does is it allows you get a little MagSafe adapter that you stick on the back of your phone. I bought one from Belkin, which I can link in the notes of this podcast. And then you kind of just like stick your phone on top of your laptop, and immediately it becomes your camera. It uses the back-facing camera to make you look way more awesome. And it works really, really well. Like you just pretty much stick it on top. You don't have to fiddle around with anything. You can, from within FaceTime and Zoom and other video apps, choose your default video input. So like you can, change it to be the webcam or to some other source if you have another thing plugged in. But if you're just looking to like improve the quality of your FaceTimes or your meetings, this is a really, really awesome feature. I've used it a little bit and it's really fantastic. It has a really, really cool part to it as well, where it uses the fact that there are like 3 different cameras on the back of modern day iPhones to it uses like the wide angled one to basically like, because that wide angled lens can see like your desk and a way like wider field of stuff, it takes your desk and then it sort of like crops smartly the image so that people can actually see what your hands are doing. So like I was doing this thing during pandemic teaching where like I would have one camera on my face and then I would have like a secondary webcam that would be like showing like me playing a piano keyboard or like showing what I'm doing with my mouse or my keyboard or some other kind of thing. And it can like, continuity camera can do that all simultaneously with just the camera of your iPhone. It's honestly pretty magical, and I'm planning on using it quite a lot. I'm still, we're back in person, of course, and have been for over a year now, but I still am, I found that like meetings for things are still fairly common practice in my teaching job. We're using Google Meet, like for example, to me and the other GT band directors in my district have been meeting a lot. Some of the meetings I do with my staff are still virtual, so there's just lots of reasons to have this really, really easy feature. This next one is something that I've been using on iOS 16 and may have mentioned on the show. It's that you can now mark a text message as unread. That's not specific to the Mac, but it's something that since I installed macOS Ventura the last of all the new updates. I was really missing it because I do a lot of productivity on my Mac, especially a lot of iMessaging, and it's like a total game changer to have that feature everywhere. The same focus filters I've mentioned also earlier on the show come to the Mac, so I can now, when I get to work, all of my devices basically just like filter the information inside of my apps. So like messages only shows me messages from my wife and from like certain school staff members. My mailbox flips to my work email. I don't see any personal messages unless I opt to. My Safari web browser like switches to a group of tabs that are specific to my job. It's really, really an awesome automation to have. It functions based on my phone's geolocation. So every time I park in the parking lot and my phone detects I'm at work, all of those filters turn on. It's really, really nice. There is the new Stage Manager feature for the Mac. I'm going to talk about that more when I get to talking about the iPadOS update in just a second. And then, of course, many people have written about that the new Settings app has been redesigned. I don't suspect that that's something that a lot of teachers will care about, but it is a pretty messy and frustrating design. It's like kind of in the spirit, in the style of like the iOS Settings app, but it's kind of half-baked and half-finished and has some weird stuff to it. Like the old version was weird and kind of confusing in some ways. This doesn't like really improve any of that. It just makes it weird and confusing in other different ways. And I really hope that it gets fixed soon because I'm feeling sometimes a little lost when I'm fiddling in my settings. Okay, next up, iOS 16.1. So for the phone, there's like one kind of major thing I'm excited about. It's that there's this thing called live activities. And this is when an app can basically take a kind of notification style user interface and like just permanently publish it to your phone's lock screen. So like, let's say that DoorDash, for example, like, you know how they like send you a million texts when your food is like coming up, you know, or like an Uber driver, like your Uber driver has been found. Your Uber driver is like on the way. Your Uber driver is approaching, like all these different texts. Well, what Uber or DoorDash could do is just have like a permanently visible thing on your lock screen that they publish, which just has live updating information. It works for sports scores. It works for quite a lot of different things. Unfortunately, DoorDash has, you know, they have not implemented this yet, but a couple of really cool apps have. One that I really like is the Drafts app, which is kind of like the place where all of the things that I write start. I use it a lot on my iPhone to take quick notes, and then I later kind of send them to other places where they're more relevant. Sometimes like really quick in-the-moment notes don't ever even leave Drafts. Like I just address them so immediately that they stay in the app. And they have this really cool feature now where you can pin a note, and then when you close the note that's pinned, it'll just like keep that note pinned to your lock screen. Now, I'm on the new iPhone. You can, of course, take advantage of these new live activities if you're not, as long as you're on iOS 16.1. But for me, I really like the implementation on the new iPhone because when you're not on the lock screen, you're using the phone. It actually like puts that same live information inside of what's called the dynamic island, which is like the black little oval-shaped housing for where the camera sits. So like, I close the pinned note, and then all of a sudden the top of my phone is indicating to me, hey, you have sort of like this unresolved note in process here. And then I can turn off my phone's display, and it doesn't really turn off. It goes to the always on display. So like permanently on my phone, every time I look at it, I remember, hey, I'm like dealing with this note right now, and I can tap on it to quickly access that note. I really got some mileage out of this when I was hosting the district's middle school GT band auditions this past Wednesday, and I was one of two hosts on site, and lots of little things just kind of kept coming up that I needed to address, and it was really helpful to just have like constantly whenever I would look at my phone a little visual like kind of reminder of like which things that have just come up in the past 10 minutes have and have not been dealt with yet. So that was really cool. Timery is a great time tracking app that I use, and that supports this as well. So it'll always show you your most currently running timer on your lock screen. There's another one called TV Remote, which is an app that works with most TVs, and it puts the volume controls and the play and the pause button on your lock screen as well. So these are just a couple of interesting examples of this. I thought the Drafts one was really cool because I was having trouble thinking about like productivity applications for this, and that was a really cool one that came in handy just pretty recently. Okay, so the iPad 16.1 iPadOS is like bringing this new feature called Stage Manager. And Stage Manager is a mode that you can invoke through the control center. And when you're in this mode, you can have windowed apps. So in the same way that on a Mac or like a Windows PC or any kind of similar operating system, you can have fully draggable and resizable windows, as many as you want on the screen at a time, and like kind of quickly see the information on them all and bounce between them. That's kind of the idea of this iPad thing. It's pretty frustrating and confusing to use. I can't. It's hard for me to summarize everything I feel about it and have learned about it over the summer, but it has some weird, like it makes it almost as easy and flexible to use as the Mac, except for that like the windows kind of snap to certain sizes. They're not like completely 100% customizable, like how big the windows are. And then they also, like when you drag them to different places on the screen, they also like kind of snap into different places. So it's not like really easy to have them be exactly where you need them to go, which is to me really important on a smaller screen, which my iPad is a little bit of a smaller screen than my MacBook. And so I've just been like kind of confused. You can only have 4 different apps at a time, but you can organize them into different stages. So like you can kind of have, there's like a little left sidebar area. I think it's called the strip is what they're calling it. And it sort of shows you like different groupings of apps that you can kind of toggle between. And I just find it really cumbersome. Like it's supposed to kind of make it easier. And it's one of those things where it's like, once I get all of my windows like perfectly set up just the right way, I can have like 3 or 4 apps on screen, where previously I could really only have 2 or 3 in the traditional iPad multitasking. But it takes so much time to get it dialed in just right that it's like almost more trouble than it's worth. So I've got mixed feelings about it. Like I'm definitely using it in some contexts. It's really fun to kind of use like have my iPad be to the right of my Mac and sort of like use it with my keyboard and mouse and sort of just freely navigate between the iPad windowed situation and the Mac windowed situation. But then again, it's like so close to the Mac experience, but because of the windows not like totally going where I want them to, it just is kind of jarring and weird. So I don't know. I definitely don't think it's terrible, and I've been using it, but it's really hard for me to imagine how it's better than like if you're used to the thing where you just kind of drag the app icon off to the left or the right of an existing open full screen app. You kind of get 2 in side by side. And that's still what I'm using most of the time. When I teach, I have my scores in Fourscore open on the left side of my iPad screen, and then I have my seating chart in GoodNotes open on the right side of the screen, and then I have my lesson plans open in a little kind of slide over window, and that's like 3/4 of the maximum number of apps I can have when I'm using Stage Manager. Only in Stage Manager, I have very limited control over the sizes, and I lose a lot of screen real estate because of how they sort of like snap to these different sizes. I can't like really occupy the full pixel, every single pixel of the screen. So I don't know if this makes any sense. You should try it yourself if you've updated and see what you think. It works on all iPad Pros all the way back to the 2018 model and any M1 iPad, so the iPad Air as well. It's really interesting. I don't know what it says for the future of the iPad. I just kind of, I want to continue to use my iPad in the most productive way possible. But things like this make me feel like, I've been critical before of like the split view multitasking, but it makes me feel like maybe it is the best way to do it on the iPad. I don't know. Anyway, there are also new iPads. The brand new base level iPad now comes in super fun colors and has been updated to have the like kind of squared off edges, these like flat sides. It's been updated in a number of other ways. It even got a brand new keyboard that you can attach to it that has a kickstand. And if you like kickstands and keyboards and you want a cheaper iPad that you can use sometimes like a laptop, this is a really sweet iPad. It seems really cool. Most musicians I know want to use the Apple Pencil though, and that's where things get a little weird. It uses the first generation Apple Pencil, which wouldn't be the end of the world except for that they updated these new iPads to have USB-C, and the Apple Pencil charges through Lightning. So in order to charge it, you have to get an adapter to plug the pencil into the side of the iPad, which I think is weird. I guess you could stick it into your phone or into a wall charger. I don't know. It seems a little weird. This is definitely not an iPad for me. I feel like it's more the kind of iPad for someone who wants to just, kind of watch movies and read books and not spend a lot of money, but also have like a nicer experience on the iPad. If you're interested in an iPad for doing some score reading and you don't mind having like not the totally biggest size. I'd say the iPad Air is probably better for you since that supports the Apple Pencil 2, which snaps right onto the side of the edge of the iPad, and it's a really, really powerful machine. It has the M1 processor. For me personally, I've sort of made my peace with having the 12.9-inch iPad. I think I'm going to keep my 2018 model for at least another 18 months and see what happens next time around. There are some cool new things coming to the new iPad Pros, like there's this new feature where you hover your pencil close to the screen and then it can like sort of give you some context. Like for example, if you're an artist, like a painting app like Procreate, it'll kind of show you like your currently selected brush size, opacity, and color when you near the pencil's tip to the screen. And I think that's cool. But again, for me, my iPad is still running pretty strong. And it's tough for me to, iPadOS is, now that it seems unclear to me, like with these new iPads, like, and with this Stage Manager thing, like I'm not 100% sure, like really where Apple is going with the iPad. And I'm pretty happy using my big iPad in the classroom for things like sheet music and seating charts and other paper things, kind of like a digital piece of paper. And then we have an iPad mini here at the house that I think is really comfortable to hold in one hand for things like reading long form, checking Twitter, watching movies occasionally. Like it's kind of a nice, I don't like having two iPads, but it's kind of a nice way to reconcile that. So I think, there's some rumors of like even bigger iPad Pros coming out in the next couple of years. And, who knows, maybe like a 14. I don't think I would go as big as some of the rumors that there's going to be a 16-inch iPad, but I, would certainly maybe consider a 14-inch iPad for sheet music, especially since I always have it up on the screen with another app on the side. Okay, you're probably wondering things about, compatibility, like should you update? I have had no issues with any of my software and really no major bugs since the public releases of all of this software came out. I will link in the notes to this episode a great post I always link to on my blog. It's from the Scoring Notes blog, and it's their annual post telling the status of all of the music notation software and whether or not it works natively with macOS Ventura and Apple Silicon. So check in the notes to learn more about that. In general, Sibelius is not officially supported, but there are no major issues. It should work fine. Finale is not supported. Dorico is supported. MuseScore is not supported. I have, however, used it and have had no issues. And then Notion is supported on macOS Ventura, and on the iPad, it supports iOS 16 as well. Notion, by the way, news about that, it is now free on the iPad. And while I think it's super compelling to use something like the iPad version of Dorico or Sibelius now that they're out, if you're looking for something that is, has got a lot of features and where a lot of those features are free, Notion is a no-brainer to have in your App Store purchases. So I would recommend going to check that out. The Scoring Notes post also, says which ones are native to Apple Silicon and will run, on your M1 Mac. All of them will. It's just that some of them run using Rosetta, which means they're likely going to be faster, but not taking full advantage of all the things that the M1 and M2 chips bring. All right. That's it for that. Let's talk about music of the week. I've been listening to Gustav Mahler, 10 Symphonies by Rafael Kubelik. I think I'm pronouncing that right. This is a series of recordings that I don't know why I was sleeping on these, but they just, when you listen to a piece of music, particularly when you listen to a piece of music like that's interpreted differently by a different orchestra conductor, you sometimes will hear things that you've never heard in a piece that you've heard, even if you've heard it 100 times. And this recording, some of them at least, are like that concept, but like times 100. Like there's just tons of tiny little things I'm noticing, like lines that are like in different instruments that I've just never really heard like for themselves before. They kind of like just blend into the ensemble. So I'm just hearing all sorts of like new ideas and phrasing concepts and articulations that are just totally different and fresh to me, even though this recording is, not new. So that's kind of been something I've been listening to lately. As far as app of the week goes, I've been testing Raindrop.io. It's got a pretty generous free tier. This is a bookmarking app, and sometimes I just like to kind of throw some links to some websites that I'm looking at into an everything bucket style app. So I used to use Evernote, and just in order to kind of clear my tabs out, I would just say, all right, well, I want to look at this later. I'll just throw it into Evernote. Well, then lately I was using DevonThink for this, which has kind of been my Evernote replacement for the past couple of years. But DevonThink works a little better for me when I'm dealing with productivity, like files, PDFs, not like things that are just fun to check out, but have sort of a low priority in terms of like when I deal with them. And so I needed something to just kind of throw tweets that I want to look at later, or gift ideas for other people, or just like fun video, like just a generalized bookmark manager where I'm not like bookmarking the pages in my web browser, because that would get insane. Basically just like a dumping bucket for here's stuff on the web to save or to check out. So I've been using Raindrop, and it's got an app on all of my devices. It's a pretty friendly app, and it integrates with Readwise, which is a service that aggregates your highlights across your Kindle purchases, your PDFs, your Apple books, and your Read It Later accounts like Instapaper, and then it kind of like serves them back to you. But what I like the most is that they have a plugin for my current note-taking app, Obsidian, which will actually like take all of your Readwise highlights and then import them into your notes. So pretty much anything I highlight in the Raindrop app, like if I clip a tweet to it and then someone says an interesting thing and I don't want to forget that thing, I can highlight it, and then Readwise will grab that highlight and save it to my Obsidian notes. And that's just kind of a cool way to not forget stuff. So I like Raindrop. Check it out. My tech tip of the week is also sort of an app. It's an extension. I'll give you a Safari one and a Chrome one. The extension for Safari I'm using a lot lately is called Vidimote, and it allows me to change the tempo of whatever video or audio file I am streaming from a given page. So let's say I'm on YouTube. YouTube is maybe a bad example because it already has some playback features, but it won't like give you anything. It won't give you anything in between 50, 75, and 100% speed. And then if you have some like faster ones. What I like about Vidimote is I can go like 85% speed, 80% speed. I can get real control about how fast something goes, which is really useful to a musician and a teacher like myself. There's a cool Chrome extension that does the same thing called Transpose. It also does pitch, which is really great and handy to not have to download something and apply any audio effects to it, just to kind of be able to do it right from the web browser. All right, well, that's it for this brief episode. I hope it was helpful. And again, look out for the next episode. It features Scott Watson. We had a great talk about all the many cool things he's doing, his tech workflows, his YouTube page, his compositions. It was a great conversation. Today, I would like to introduce you to my scale exercise play-along tracks with trap beats, available for sale at robbyburns.com. These trap beat play-alongs include over 72 audio recordings, each of which includes a count-off, a trap beat at 70 beats per minute, and a tuning drone playing both the tonic and each note of the scale in just intonation, so your ensemble can learn to play in tune, develop steady, sustained tone, and blend with other sounds. These drones are stacked over top engaging trap beats that help students to practice at slower tempos while developing steadiness of time and a better concept of how the beat is subdivided. The scale exercises include whole notes, half notes, quarter notes, eighth notes, scale and thirds, and a mini scale with an arpeggio at the end in all 12 keys. I've also included 3 speed variations of a Remington exercise, so band ensembles can work on their favorite tone and technical exercises, whether they be from a method book or of your own invention. The tracks are $15, but for $40, you can get the stems to the tracks in Logic Pro and GarageBand format, so that you can do things like speed them up and slow them down, change the pitch, add your own accompaniment. Take out my voice and add your own.
And 2 and 3 and go.
Or even sequence the tracks together to completely automate your ensemble warm-up. These tracks are perfect for running through your Google Meet, Zoom, or virtual teaching platform of choice, or for running through the loudspeakers at the beginning of your in-person rehearsal. Check them out now at robbyburns.com/store. I'm Robby Burns. Thanks for listening to Music Ed Tech Talk. You can find the show's page, show notes for the episode, and my blog at musicedtechtalk.com. You can subscribe to blog posts through an RSS app of your choice, and you can subscribe to the podcast in the podcast app of your choice. You can now get blog posts delivered right into your email inbox once a week. Please rate and review this show in the podcast app. It absolutely helps. It'll take a second and just a few taps. Word of mouth is helpful too, so please spread the word about it. Learn more about my music and teaching career at robbyburns.com. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube at Robby Burns. Please consider supporting me on Patreon at patreon.com/musicedtechtalk. All support tiers get perks, but even the base tier gets you access to the Music Ed Tech Talk Discord community, where you can chat with other supporters and guests of the show about music, apps, pedagogy, lesson ideas, tech support, and more. It's a fun place to be, and I hope to connect with you soon. Thanks to this week's sponsor, Scale Exercise Play Along Tracks. Be sure to check it out, and see you next time.